People often assume silence hits both sides the same way. It doesn't. When the calls stop, the texts disappear, and neither of you reaches out, two completely different experiences begin. And the one who understands that difference ends up in control. Not by playing games, but by protecting their peace while the other person is still trying to make sense of it. Silence has never been equal, and pretending it is only keeps you stuck, staring at your phone, waiting for something that may never come. You know that feeling, holding your phone, fighting the urge to send just one message to break the tension. You tell yourself you'll stay strong, that you'll wait it out, but time drags. Every notification gives you a rush only to disappoint. You check if he's been online, if he saw your last message. Even if it's over, the quiet feels louder than any argument you ever had.
And pause. This is where most people get trapped, in that strange middle ground where you're not together, but not fully apart either. It starts to feel like whoever reaches out first loses, like breaking the silence means you cared more or couldn't handle the distance.
But that's not what's really happening. While you're replaying every detail in your mind, trying to decode his silence, he's having a completely different experience. Not better or worse, just different. And once you understand that, you stop driving yourself in circles. When communication ends, it creates two separate realities. For her, the impact is immediate and emotional, like something meaningful has suddenly been taken away. For him, it's delayed. It takes time before he even notices what's missing. She starts questioning her worth, wondering if she ever mattered. He, later on, starts wondering if he lost something valuable. She looks for answers and closure. He looks for space to think without pressure. Same silence, but entirely different stories playing out in their minds. If you don't recognize this, you'll keep reacting based on how you feel, instead of understanding what's actually happening on the other side. For many women, the silence hits instantly. The moment the messages stop, the mind starts racing. Every conversation gets replayed, every word examined. You question everything. Did you say too much or not enough? Did he lose interest? Is he busy, or is this his way of walking away? The thoughts don't slow down because for you, communication equals connection. When he was reaching out, it felt real. It felt safe. So when that disappears, it doesn't feel neutral. It feels like rejection. That's why it hurts so much in the beginning. It's not just about missing him. It's about what the silence seems to represent. It feels like you weren't enough, like he moved on while you're still holding on. But what most women don't realize early on is that he's not experiencing it that way at all. Not because he doesn't care, but because he processes distance differently. When things go quiet, he's usually not overanalyzing it. He's not sitting there trying to decode the silence. Instead, he's focused on his routine: work, friends, the gym, whatever fills his day. In fact, at first, the lack of pressure can even feel like a relief. There's no expectation to respond, no emotional weight to carry in the moment. Most men prefer to step back and think things through on their own time. They don't process emotions in real time the same way. So in the beginning, silence doesn't hit him emotionally. It just creates space. And for a while, that space feels fine. That's the first major difference. She feels the silence as pain. He feels it as freedom. So while she's struggling through the first days or weeks, he's just moving forward, barely noticing the shift. But that phase doesn't last. Over time, that space starts to change. What once felt easy begins to feel empty. It doesn't happen overnight. It builds slowly. A memory pops up. A song reminds him of you. Something funny happens and his instinct is to share it, but he can't. A tough day comes and he realizes there's no one to talk to the way he used to with you. Those small moments start adding up. And eventually, the silence stops feeling like relief and starts feeling like loss. Here's the twist. By the time he reaches that point, you've already gone through the hardest part. You've felt the pain, faced the overthinking, and started to come out the other side. You're beginning to reconnect with yourself, to rebuild your routine, to find moments of peace again. So when he finally starts missing you, you're no longer in the same emotional place. What once felt like rejection for you now becomes clarity. And what once felt like freedom for him turns into absence. That shift changes everything. At some point, you notice the shift. You're no longer glued to your phone every few minutes. You're not replaying old conversations trying to figure out what went wrong. You're just living your life again. And that change in your energy, he can feel it, even without direct contact. Men often don't fully recognize what they had until it's no longer available. When you were always there, checking in, responding, giving your attention, it became predictable. He knew you'd be there if he wanted to talk. There was no uncertainty. But once you pull back and your presence is no longer guaranteed, something changes in his mind. He starts wondering about you. Is she okay? Is she still thinking about me? Has she moved on? Is there someone else? This is the part most people overlook. When silence takes over, both people are forced to face themselves. You've already been through that process. Dealing with your emotions, your fears, your need for closure. But for him, it's only beginning. What once felt like space now starts to feel like something missing. And that absence creates curiosity. It makes him reflect. It makes him question whether walking away was actually the right decision. But this is where you need to stay grounded. The moment he starts feeling that absence, your instinct might be to open the door again immediately, to show you still care, that you're still there. That's where things can fall apart. If you go back to being constantly available, nothing really changes. You just restart the same pattern. Before, every time you reached out or carried the conversation, you were showing him that your attention was always there. He didn't have to earn it or think about losing it. And when something feels guaranteed, it often loses its value. That's just human nature. Now, by stepping back, you've broken that pattern. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer waiting in the background. And that uncertainty is what makes him pay attention. Not because he's a bad person, but because now there's something at risk. Now he has to consider whether losing you is a real possibility. The real power of silence isn't just that it makes him think about you. It's that it gives you the time to rebuild yourself, your confidence, your identity, your peace. And when you genuinely reach a place where you feel okay without him, everything changes. People can sense that shift. They can feel when you're no longer waiting for their validation. And that kind of energy naturally draws attention. Not because you're pretending, but because you've actually moved forward. As time goes on, he may test the waters. Maybe he likes one of your posts. Maybe he sends a casual, "Hey," with no real depth behind it. At this stage, he's not necessarily ready for anything serious. He's just checking if you're still available, if you still care. This is where many people slip. They see that small effort and assume it means something bigger. They respond quickly, maybe even eagerly, and in doing so, they give everything away. Now he knows you're still there, and because of that, he doesn't need to step up. But if you respond with calm distance, or don't respond right away, you leave room for uncertainty. And that uncertainty is what keeps him thinking about you. It makes him realize you're not just sitting around waiting anymore. It makes him feel that if he doesn't act differently, he might actually lose you. That's when the dynamic starts to shift. You're no longer chasing or waiting for signs. You're focused on your own life, and he can sense that. It sparks curiosity. It makes him want to understand what changed, and sometimes it pushes him to come back with more intention. But here's the truth. You need to accept this part clearly. Not every man will come back, and that's okay, because the purpose of silence isn't to make him chase you. It's to remind you that your worth doesn't depend on whether he does. You don't need his attention to feel valuable. You don't need his messages to feel secure. Silence teaches you that your peace comes from within, not from someone else's presence. And once you truly understand that, the outcome doesn't control you anymore. If he reaches out, you can choose how to respond. If he doesn't, you're still okay. That's where your power returns, when your emotions are no longer tied to his actions. Now, if he does come back, that's where things require clarity. After weeks or even months, he might send a message. Maybe it's an apology. Maybe it's casual. Maybe he acts like nothing happened. And you have to decide how to handle it. The message itself doesn't mean much. What matters is the intention behind it and what follows after. Is he just bored, lonely, or curious? Or has he actually reflected and is ready to show up differently? You won't find that answer in one text. You'll see it in consistent actions over time. A lot of people get caught here. That one message feels like validation, like proof that their feelings mattered. But one moment of attention doesn't erase the silence that came before. It doesn't prove change. It just means you crossed his mind. And this is where your growth shows. You're no longer desperate for small signs. You're not accepting the bare minimum just to feel connected again. You've rebuilt yourself, and now you understand your standards. If he shows up with little effort, you can recognize it and walk away without feeling like you lost anything, because you didn't. You protected your peace. But if he shows up with genuine effort, willing to have real conversations and prove change through his actions, then you can decide from a place of strength, not need, whether you want to give it another chance. That's the real difference. You're choosing, not chasing. In the end, silence between two people isn't just about missing each other. It's about being forced to face yourself without distractions. It's about rediscovering who you are outside of the relationship. And that journey looks different for each person. She usually feels it deeply and early, processes it, and grows from it. He often feels it later, in his own time, realizing the loss when she's already moved forward. Once you understand that, you stop taking his silence personally. You stop tying your worth to his actions. While he's figuring things out, you're rebuilding yourself. And when you reach that place where you truly don't need his validation anymore, you become untouchable, because nothing he does or doesn't do can shake your peace. That's the real purpose of silence. It's not about getting him back. It's about finding yourself again. The real goal isn't to make them come back. It's to reach a point where it no longer matters if they do. Because the moment you stop caring about the outcome, you take your power back. Their silence stops controlling your emotions, and it no longer defines how you see yourself. You're just living your life, feeling calm, feeling whole, and that's the real win. When both people go quiet, that space reveals the truth about each person. It shows who can sit with discomfort and grow, and who runs back to old habits just to escape the feeling. It shows who's willing to do the inner work and who just wants a quick emotional fix. It exposes who's ready for something genuine and who's still caught up in patterns. And most importantly, it shows you whether you've truly let go or if you're still holding on to something that no longer serves you. Silence acts like a mirror. It reflects the things you've been avoiding, your fear of being alone, your need for reassurance, the belief that your value depends on someone else's attention. And when you finally face those things instead of running from them, something shifts. You come out stronger, clearer, more grounded. You stop depending on constant noise to feel okay. You create your own sense of peace, your own rhythm, your own happiness. That's when you realize silence was never your enemy. It was something you needed. On the other side of it is a version of you that doesn't fall apart when someone stops texting. A version that doesn't question their worth or lose sleep over someone else's choices. A version that knows who they are without needing validation. That version of you was always there. Silence just forced you to meet them sooner. So when everything goes quiet, don't panic. Don't chase. Don't break the silence just because it feels uncomfortable or because you want answers. Sit with it. Let it do what it's meant to do. Let it strip away the parts of you that were tied to someone else's approval. Let it show you who you are when you're not trying to be enough for someone else. That's where your real strength comes from. Not from his attention, not from his messages, not from whether he chooses you, but from your ability to stand on your own, feel complete on your own, and build a life that doesn't depend on anyone else to feel meaningful. And if he does come back after all of that, if he finally sees what he lost and is ready to show up differently, you get to decide what happens next. But now you're choosing from a place of strength, not need. You're not accepting him because you can't be without him. You're considering it because it aligns with the person you've become. And if it doesn't align, you can walk away without falling apart because you already know you'll be okay. That's what understanding silence really gives you. It's not about winning or losing. It's not about who cares more or who reaches out first. It's about using that space to reconnect with yourself.
To remember that you were whole before they came into your life, and you're still whole now.
Silence isn't the end. It's the beginning of the part of your life where you finally choose yourself. Now think about where you are. Days, maybe weeks, or even months into this quiet. You're not the same person you were at the start. You've felt the confusion, the pain, the uncertainty, but you've also grown. You've realized you're stronger than you thought, that you can handle the unknown, that your peace doesn't depend on constant communication. And while he might still be figuring things out in his own time, you're already ahead. You've done the hard part. You've faced it, processed it, and come out stronger. And whether he ever understands what he lost or not, you've gained something far more valuable. You've found yourself again. So let the silence exist. Let it be a space for growth. Don't fight it or try to fill it with empty words just to ease the discomfort. Let it shape you, because on the other side of that silence is a stronger, more grounded version of you. And that version is worth every moment of discomfort you had to go through to get there. The next time you feel the urge to reach out, to check on him, to break the silence just to feel something, pause. Remind yourself that you don't need to know what he's thinking. You don't need his attention to prove your value. You don't need his response to feel important. You already are. And once you truly understand that, once you feel it, not just think it, you become unshakable. Not because he came back, but because you finally stopped needing him to.